John 8:32 says, "And you shall know the truth, and the truth shall make you free." Welcome to this Wisdom for Living discussion led by pastor, teacher, and counselor Al Rosenblum. For access to Al's other studies, to request an appointment for a personal discussion, or to contact our team, go to www.alrosenblum.com.
Prepare yourself to study, to talk about evil. Talk about Dr. Patel just a little bit. Tell you how I met him and some of the first times that we talked. So, Father, thank you so much for Jim Patel and for his faithfulness, his desire to understand what you provided for mankind to be able to live the Christian life. How do we get into the Christian life and how do we live it? This was his obsession, just like mine, Lord. How do we do this? And he was a great friend to me and a mentor and a great leader, and I thank you for his life. Pray tonight, Lord, that we could understand the Elijah connection. So much there that I don't see yet, and I pray that you give us wisdom and the ability to see, understand the parallels. Because where we are today is where they were when he came on the scene. Give us wisdom into this. In Christ's name we pray. Amen. All right, let me see if I can get us up. There's our study. Now we're going to be, again, pushing back on evil is our topic. And we're using the life of Elijah and the way that God used him to approach the evil that was in Israel at the time. Now, we've talked about Ahab being the worst king. He did more evil than all of those that came before him, including his father Omri. Omri accelerated the introduction of Baal worship into Israel. And let me make sure this is working. Now we're going. So okay. So we're in the life of Elijah, and we're seeing the beginning of the pushback, where God brings Elijah on the scene with a strategy for dealing with evil. And now, hopefully, we're going to see that in America. If not, we're going to be at the end. So, I heard a discussion in front of Congress, a man named Jordan Peterson, who's a psychologist, very, very well-known man, that I like considerably. I like him a lot. And he was explaining that AI, these artificial intelligence computers, can hunt back all the way to the beginning of the internet, of social media, and everything you've ever said, everything you've ever liked, everything you've ever disliked, everything you've ever reposted or, encouraged, or everything you've ever bought, returned, etc. Every word you've said, every political thing that you've agreed with or disagreed with. And they can pull all that together and they can create a representation of you and understand you. And now they have an image of you based on all of your choices over however long you've been on social media. And just like this right here, if you're on this particular Bible study, then that will be recorded somewhere. Well, what they've learned is they can create this digital you that is almost like a person, and then having come to understand what makes you tick, what drives you and pushes you, they can do what they call, they give you a nudge, which means that they put some kind of circumstance in your life, something online, some advertisement. They put this idea in front of you, and they're confident it will nudge you toward the direction that they want. And they believe, and very successfully, that these few people who have these AI machines, who have the resources and the money to do all of this,
can literally take control of people's lives. Now, this is beyond anything that we've ever thought. I mean, this is really brainwashing, controlling the masses. I've heard of brainwashing the, small groups or select people, but this is a mass psychosis. Now, this term was developed during the COVID, where they can really control you, and this is what evil is doing. Evil has hijacked technology and is using technology to supplement, to influence, to reprogram people's brains, people's choices. They don't have to put some kind of chip in your head. They just do it through your social media. Now, we're going to push back, just like Elijah in 1 Kings 17. So, Elijah the Tishbite, who was of the settlers of Gilead, said to Ahab, "As the Lord, the God of Israel, lives, before whom I stand, surely there will be neither dew nor rain these years," and it was 3.5 years, "except by my word." So, it's been 60 plus years. And when this happens, Solomon died in 930, so Ahab comes to the throne in like maybe 870, something like that. 56 years later, what is that, 30 years and then 26, so about 880 or something like that, that Ahab comes to the throne. It's been 60 years since Solomon opened the door to idolatry. Just like in the 50s and 60s, America opened the door to foreign ideas. This globalist movement that began to take place, this interchange of ideas with the world, and it had to be. But all of a sudden, we had all kinds of crazy ideas coming into our country. So, this is what happened in Israel. And this opened the door for all kinds of degeneracy, homosexuality. What we're looking at is this transgender nonsense, which is really an induced psychosis. This is the nudge. They see somebody that's struggling. Maybe it's a really masculine girl. She loves to fight. She loves to run and play with the boys. She's good, athletic. Well, they nudge her and say, you really ought to be a male. And she believes it. She buys into it. And then here we go. So 60 years after Solomon opened the door, Ahab comes to the throne, and you find the nation in chaos. They fully have embraced, at this point, they're ready to embrace Baal as this false god. They've thrown Yahweh out, the creator, the one who brought them out of Egypt, and now they want Baal. The people. So the people accepted this. Now, in 60 years plus since Solomon, quote, listened to the voice of his wives, he did this to make them happy. And he allowed idols and worship of other gods, these lesser beings, into Israel, God's sacred space. I want to say just a moment about sacred space, because as we learn about sacred space, it becomes very important. God, our God Yahweh, he names himself. That's the word to be. He says, I am that I am. And some call it Jehovah. In the Hebrew, it's Yahweh, and it's the verb to be. And he says, I am the one who's always existed and always will. I am. Tell him I am sent you. And so that's his name, Yahweh. And so he has what's called sacred space that he claims as his own, that he refuses to allow anyone else to occupy, any of these lesser beings with whom he's in conflict. Sacred space is any place or thing that God claims as his own, belonging only to him, that he guards jealously. Like Israel, the nation Israel. He didn't want any other anything or anyone else worshipped in that space. That space belonged to the nation of Israel, and it belonged to him. All right, so Israel, how about the tabernacle? Tabernacle was a sacred space that only God or those whom God allowed in were ever came in there. You could go in there like in the temple, in the naos, which was the Holy of Holies. In the temple, you go in there without authorization and you drop dead. So, how about the believer's body? God uses your body now as sacred space. That's why demons are not going to mess with you directly. They'll mess with you indirectly. They'll try to influence you, but they can't get in your body because that belongs to God. So, heaven is sacred space. God allows and controls who comes in and who does not. So God has space on the earth that is sacred to him that he guards. He says, you got to stay out. Solomon let these false gods in. Now, 56 years after Solomon dies, Ahab takes the throne and the nation is saturated with evil. The people are willing to accept the killing of Yahweh's prophets and the worship of Baal with his prophets. They're willing to do it. They don't fight against it. They don't gang up and go, no. They accept it. All right. They've become passive. You see it in America today. It's the same process. We've been nudged into passivity. The people became fearful and passive, afraid of being persecuted, called a radical extremist if they worship the Lord. So they remain quiet and out of the way. And that's what a lot of people have done with all that's gone on in America in the last 10 to 20 years. We've sat back and we've tried to be quiet. We've tried to not get canceled, not to speak too loudly, not to put out speak so directly to these people so that you would get on somebody's radar and get kicked off. Or worse. They're arresting people that were simply in the vicinity of the Capitol building on January 6th. The press, reporters, people that were there doing their job, they're arresting them. This is just part of. So what they're doing is they're trying to so persecute anyone who speaks against them, and I may be coming under it now, that they're even put in jail for it. So hopefully don't want to go to that extreme to be put in jail, but if it has to be, it has to be. And if it comes to that, then you want us to talk about speaking boldly, we'll go bold. We'll go bold, and we may not go home, but we'll go bold. So God allows this process to occur for his own reasons related to the angelic conflict. But at some point, and this is what we see with Elijah, he decides that evil has been sufficiently exposed, the people have sufficiently suffered, they're ready to turn around and come back to him. And he says it's time to put a stop to this. And he does. All right. When he decides to break the rule of evil, God withdraws grace logistics. These earthly grace logistics that we all need, he withdraws them, causing existing resources to shrink, breaking the leverage of the rich over the poor. Now, I want you to see the story, and I'll bring it up again because it's really significant. In chapter 18, Elijah has prayed and God has shut up the heavens. There's no rain, there's no dew, there's no moisture. Everything dies out. This is an agricultural economy. It just completely dries up. And listen to 1 Kings 18, 2 through 6. This is where Elijah is about to come and confront Ahab. And it says, now the famine was very severe in Samaria. This is the northern part. This is also where the Samaritans lived in the days of Jesus. And Ahab, the king, called Obadiah, who was the manager over the king's palace. Obadiah was a believer. He was a great believer, and he managed the property where the royalty lived. So you got two very high up. You got the king, and you got the manager of all the king's holdings and homes. Pretty big dudes. It says, now Obadiah feared the Lord greatly. It came about when Jezebel destroyed the prophets of the Lord that Obadiah took 100 prophets and hid them by 50s in a cave, provided them with bread and water. In other words, he provided them with food. He hid them from this persecution where Yahweh's prophets were being killed, and he hid them to keep them from being killed. He's a great hero, actually. So it says, and then Ahab said to Obadiah, go through the land to all the springs of water, to all the valleys. Perhaps we will find grass so that we can keep the horses and mules alive and not have to kill some of the cattle. Now, so they divided the land between them to survey it. Ahab went one way by himself, and Obadiah went another way by himself. Here are the two greatest men in the land, and they're out physically by themselves seeking some pasture, some patch of grass to keep the animals alive. That's how bad things are. And that's what God does. This is how God stops evil. He dries up the resources. Now that's probably going to happen to us. Hopefully, unless we really are at the end. This thing that Jordan Peterson announced or described really points to us being at the end. I mean, there's got to be one government, one healthcare system, and they're working on all that now. They're trying to implement that and put it into practice. There's got to be one monetary system, one currency, all of this business. And this is going to be all an internet-based reality. So, and they will be able to know you by your online persona. They'll try to influence you to go along with them. I mean, they're doing that now. They're absolutely doing that now. I mean, how is it that you can literally deceive so many people with such nonsense? Such nonsense. So, all right. Now, the point is, God makes war against the wealth of those that evil has enlisted to break their hold on other men. What's happening right now is that the resources of the earth have been extracted and assembled in the hands of a relatively small group of people. And they're not all the same people, not yet, but it will be. It will continue to be pulled up and used and resourced up to a very few people so that the devil can run the show with this very few people. So he's got to get all the wealth. He's got to pull it all together and own it. And that's what he's trying to do. So let's talk about this pushing back based on this story. First, the forces of evil are hijackers who take the universe and all of its resources that God created and claim it for themselves, telling humans that they created it, or at least that Yahweh didn't create it, like evolution, calling it an accident through evolution, always looking to steal God's worship from humans. Now, we can speculate what that's really all about, and we have done that. The angelic conflict ideas, those are really well-founded speculations. The Bible doesn't explicitly say what's going on between God and Lucifer, between the saved Elohim and the rebellious Elohim, these spirit beings that we call angels. What's going on there? We are not sure. But one thing we do know is that part of it's about worship. These guys, they want to be worshiped. So, in Matthew 4, 8, and 9, and you know this, and the devil takes Jesus to a very high mountain, and he showed him all the kingdoms of the world. and their glory. And he said to him, all these things I will give to you if you just fall down and worship me. Now here's the second member of the Trinity who's become a human being, joined himself to a human body, human nature. He's a human being forever. That's pretty amazing to me. But the devil's trying to persuade him to worship. Now, what in the world is that about? How is God the Son going to worship Lucifer? That's just not going to happen ever. Why would Lucifer even think that? But he does. So for some reason, this worship, this adoration, this dependence, this looking to, this depending upon, this praying to and beseeching and imploring, is some kind of coin, some kind of has value in the spiritual world. I don't know what that is. I don't think I will know, or we will know fully until we're there. But listen, who you look to for your security, who you look to for your resources, for you to get something when you need it or want it, who you look to. Is it yourself and all the work you've done, how smart you were to save all your money, and now you're so smart you've got all this money left to live on until you die, where all these other people were just not smart enough to do that? However you want to see that, that's called worshiping yourself. If you did it, see, what happened is that you were given all of these resources put into your hands, and you were wise in the use of them. Like the people that were given the coins, and the master goes off and they invest them. Well, you did well as far as the monetary part of your life. Very minor part of your life, actually. All of these things that we're talking about are promised, even in the time of a famine. So, the devil presented these kingdoms, so here's what I want you to see, as if they belonged to him and they were his to give. Now you say, well, he won it from Adam. I don't argue that. I don't really know the truth of that either. That seems to be the way it is. He gained. Adam had control, dominion over the earth, and when he sinned, somehow the devil hijacked that ownership, that control of those resources. So he says, I can give these to you. I have the authority to do so. Now, whether he does or not, the guy's a liar. He's a deceiver. Now, notice what the devil wanted. He wanted Jesus to fall down and worship him, bend the knee, to submit, recognize me as higher in authority than you. So, whatever is the true root of the conflict between the Lord and these rebellious creatures, it is centered around who is worthy to be worshiped. These creatures crave man's worship and dependence. They want us to be dependent upon them, and yet they're not worthy of that, and they will not deliver for us. They will not take care of us, and neither are they able. So, even were they able, they did not create us. We owe nothing to them. We owe everything to the Lord. And so keep your dependence and your adoration and your worship to the Lord. To the Lord. All right? Now, some humans hunger for others to look to them, to depend on them, to adore them, and to worship them. You can see people who get famous. They want to be famous. They like to be famous. Some people get famous and discover, oh boy, this was not what I wanted, because now they can't get away from it. It's a famous saying that fame does not rest well on anyone's shoulders, but especially on certain people, it doesn't belong there at all. They can't handle the constant prying into their life, the looking at them, all that. So, but some people want to possess everything. They want you to depend on them. They want to keep you in that position. And this is in all kinds of relationships. You know, this could be a parent and child. This could be a husband and wife, or wife and husband. It could be all kinds of relationships where one person tries to keep this at leverage and advantage over you so that you have to come to them. You have to come to them, okay, to get what you need. People become addicted to fame and adoration from their fans, and they sink into a deep depression if they lose this. Happens all the time. Understanding that any and all ideas, thoughts, or actions outside of God's perfect will cause any who practice these ideas to enter into a degenerative process that leads to total destruction. Now, what am I talking about? When you seek fame, fortune, because you have that in the eyes of other people, when the worship and the adoration and the respect of other human beings is what you seek, you're going to enter into a process where you're going to become addicted to that. If you get it, you're going to be addicted to it. And just like any addiction, it's going to destroy your life. And this is what's happened, I believe, to the demonic forces, is they've become addicted to this worship, to this adoration, to this, what was attractive. So you got to ask yourself. Let's take Solomon. Solomon worships Yahweh all of his life, and the Lord takes care of him, gives him great wisdom, gives him wealth. He had all these wives in his life. I'm not going to say anything. And so, but God was very good to him. So what could draw him away to worship these other creatures? Well, I think he got bored with the rules and the rituals. His worship through the Mosaic law became nothing but a ritual, an empty ritual without reality. And he got bored. And listen, these other guys, man, they had some fun worship services. You know, where you did drugs or you did alcohol, you had sex with someone, you know, all kinds of things. The downside of it was that often if you got really, really into it and you became addicted to it, and that was the whole point, is to draw you in and get you addicted to it. The greatest drug dealers ever, the greatest prostitutes ever, literally. And so they would enslave you and entrap you with your desires for sex and drugs and these feelings, and they would call it worshiping a god. That was a pretty good strategy to get people involved, was this pleasure system, okay? And this is what got Solomon, of course. And once Solomon opened the door to this and allowed it into Yahweh's sacred space, Solomon was responsible for keeping that out, just like you are in your own life. You let things in. Your next door neighbor starts making goo-goo eyes at you. You know, somebody wants to involve you in something inordinate, and you think, well, maybe just this time, maybe just for a little, maybe this once. You're a dead duck. You're a dead duck. You're going to be in so much trouble, you can't imagine how much trouble you're going to be in. Now you say, well, you're afraid. Yeah, you bet I am. You bet I'm afraid of getting myself involved in things that I have no business being involved with. This is what Solomon did. And this is what opened the door now through this degenerative process. 60 years later, Ahab, the whole place is saturated with evil. And they accept the killing of the Lord's prophets and the installing of these Baal prophets. People went, okay, whatever you say. Now, if they're afraid, they didn't want to confront it, but they became passive. So, the United States has seen the destruction of the individual. Look at the homelessness that just all around our nation. the marriage, the divorces, the homosexuality, the cohabitation that's going on. I'm not sure people are really getting married anymore. A lot of people are just living together, you know? So someone asked the other day, he said, well, I'm an older person. You know, my spouse has died, and I met someone that I enjoy being with, and there's no sex involved, or we're too old for sex. There's no more sex involved. And I don't know if you get too old for some kinds of sex. But anyway, they said there's no sex involved. What's wrong with us living together? I said, well, are you going to be a couple? Are you going to be man and wife? Well, we don't know yet. I said, I don't really know if there's anything wrong with that, of having a friendship where you share space, you share expenses. I don't know that that's wrong, you know, but I do know that it's going to get complicated. Easily gets complicated, that's for sure. But biblically, the guidelines, you know, no sex outside of marriage. They're like, well, that's not even a problem. We're not. If we got married, we wouldn't have sex. So I'm like, well, I don't know. I have to think and pray about that a little bit. Anyway, the United States has seen just the complete loss of all boundaries. Gone. We started letting that slip, and, you know, I was born in 1956. By the time, you know, I was, 12 years old, 66, 68, you know, we're really seeing things slipping. You know, the Beatles come over, and the long hair starts coming in, and even people start growing beards. And anyway, I'm just kidding. But you know, and drugs showed up that had never been seen in America, at least outwardly, overtly, and all kinds of things began to happen, and it just degenerated from there. So I graduated from high school in 1974, and by this time, 1974, many people in my own high school. I was in a southern conservative area, not wealthy, but well-to-do, and the drugs were rampant. Whereas 2 or 3 years before, 4 years before, there was hardly anything. Boy, it's just like, wow, where did all this come from? Well, that's how it works. This process of letting in the demonic, letting in that which is not of the Lord, it goes quick. And then that's what happened here. It's what's happened to America. Part of what's happened is we've just opened the doors to anything goes. How can you say that's wrong? Nothing's wrong. You know, on what basis do you say it? See, if you don't believe in God, then you don't believe in right and wrong. Why not? Because there's no basis for determining it. If we're just animals that accidentally occurred, that if life comes from evolution, this cosmic accident that produced us, and we're just animals, which is the claim, we should live like animals. You know, we should take what we want from whoever we want, or whoever we're able, like animals do. I mean, an animal, they're very opportunistic. You know, they see something that they want to eat. If they're capable of taking it without threatening their own well-being, they'll do it, and they'll eat it. They'll take some other creature that's living and going about its own business, and they will take it and eat it. Now, if humans were to act that way, if we just, and listen, this is what happens when this process comes to the end. Because, and listen, it's coming to the end in the United States. What's going to happen is going to be called chaos. It's where we're headed. So that's what's going on, if that makes sense. They've hijacked God's resources, saying those things come from me. They come from us. Now look to us, depend upon us for what you need. So the idea is depend upon yourself, because there is no God. What's God? God, you know, there is no God. You got to depend on yourself, and we'll help you figure out how to find the resources you need. Secondly, In a practical, concrete sense, evil works like a parasite that mimics the truth, but it's not the truth. It hijacks our legitimate institutions, bleeding us dry by feeding on our resources. This is what you see happening in our nation right now. Everything's been hijacked. What we call the truth has been hijacked by these certain medias that take the facts of life that are occurring and turn them into some kind of narrative and interpret them according to this narrative that works for a certain political party. And listen, all the media, and I don't say all of it, but a large portion of the media, what we call media, is intertwined with political philosophies. And that has to do with money. Whatever group listens to a media personality or a media group and pays the bills, that group is catered to. And if they believe a certain thing in a certain way, that media group is going to present it that way. Why? Because they're not after the truth, folks. That's long gone. They're after the money. They're after making the money to keep their jobs. So they keep cranking out this nonsense to appeal to certain groups, whether it's true or not. That's no longer an issue. So they crank it out so they get a payday and take care of their families. And that's the most dishonorable thing I can imagine, is lying to the detriment of human beings, threatening their lives and their livelihood with your lies so you can make a paycheck. Something else. What they're looking to do, what evil's trying to do, is bring you to a place of dependence on them instead of God. They want to redirect your needs, your prayers, your hopes, your gifts, your gratitude away from the true source, the Lord Jesus Christ, to redirect your care and concern and your gratitude toward lying entities, individual creatures that steal our mental, emotional resources from our marriages, families, and nation. Now, what do I mean by that? I mean that people get addicted to the computer, the dopamine rush of seeing the next picture, the next image, the next video, the next this, the next that. And we take what belongs to our families, what our marriages need, what our kids need, what our fellow believers need, and we invest it into the computer. We get sucked away. And I like looking at the computer. I like looking at videos, spiritual videos, people talking about the Lord and the Bible and different interpretations. Love all that stuff, but I can't let that become my priority in life. I can't let that take away what I need to give to my family. Can't do it. Listen, I can't even allow service for the Lord. Service for the Lord is for my family first, to take care of my family. And then if I do that, God will, my whole family will support me in reaching out to the world. But my family's got to come before all of this, what we call ministry. It's got to come before. And it's going to with me. Now, there's many sacrifices that I've made, some for right reasons and some for not, quite honestly. And Rhonda and I, we've talked about all that with each other, and we acknowledge that, we've both done things that weren't in the best interest because we didn't have the wisdom. And you get in habits of doing things a certain way. But listen, win your family. Win your family, whatever family you have and whatever's left, win them. Win them with love. Not just truth. Win them with love, with acceptance, with encouragement, with a positive message of God's love for them. Win them. Don't give them rules and rituals. That's what happens when everything just goes empty. Rules and rituals. So these entities want us to become dependent upon them. They want to redirect our meaning and purpose away from God, away from fulfillment in life, and redirect that our pursuits and focus onto the material, the earthly, our possessions, the superficial, recognition from people, fame, fortune, wealth, lascivious pursuits, all kinds of things. So the goal is to get us to redirect our thoughts and our focus away from the Lord, His plan, obedience, onto rules, onto rituals, onto other things other than our family. Now, and that all that extends to the family of God. So, politically, they want to take a nation. These evil forces, they weigh down the nations. Lucifer's called the deceiver of nations. This is part of the big plan, is to deceive the human beings, to cause human beings to be dependent upon these spirit beings that are rebellious against God. What they get from that, you got me. I don't completely know why they want that. That's not something that appeals to me. I don't even care if my name is tied to this stuff that we're putting out. Hopefully it helps somebody. It's getting some views. There are people watching it. I think some are watching it over and over, but we're getting some exposure, and these ideas are getting out to people. Hopefully they're helping people. It'd be terrible if they weren't, but still. All right, Colossians 3:1-2 I've come to realize a very important passage. That whole Colossians 3 the end of 2 and the beginning of 3 is talking about idolatry, worshiping angels, living by rules and rituals instead of spiritual hunger. So, if then you have been raised with Christ, and you have first-class condition, then keep seeking the things above, where Christ is seated at the right hand of God. Set your mind on the things above, not the things of the earth. So, 2 commands. Seek and set your mind. Seek the things above and set your mind on the things above. This has to do with God, His person, His plan, His policies, the way He's functioning in your life, what He's after, what He wants, the meaning and purpose that He has in all this, pursuing that. See, learn about Him. Understand Him as much as you're able. What does He want? What does He want for me? What does He want from me? Keep on learning. Keep on. And listen, don't just learn like, oh, there's another little piece. No. Learn to live. Learn to apply. Learn so that you can live and apply. If you don't take this and live it, I mean, what a waste. I know so many people that just got into the addiction of learning it. Well, we went to, got another Bible study, learned that idea over again. And I've learned it how many times? Like 30, 40. Now I've learned it all over again. Hey, hooray. God is served. I'm like, I don't know. I don't think so. So, thirdly, why do the forces of evil seek to extract the resources of many to put them in the hands of a few that they can control? What's the point of all that? Well, to rule mankind through blackmail and force. They steal all the resources, and now they have everything. And they can leverage you because they've got everything you need. And you say, well, not me. Listen, when somebody's got all the food and your grandchild, little kid, little 1-year-old, 2-year-old, is hungry and in need, you tell me you won't do what is asked of you to get what you need for it. You will. You will. I will. We'll see. I don't know if I have that much courage, that much trust in the Lord. We'll see, won't we? I hope we don't. I hope this happens after I'm gone. Listen, Dr. Bertel got that wish, didn't he? He got to go home. Good for him. Man, he did a good job while he was here. Didn't agree with everything he did. He didn't agree with me. But great friend of mine, mentor, guy who gave me great advice. He told me 10 years before I did it to get on the internet. Take your teaching ministry and put it on the internet. Where am I going to put it? Who's going to listen to me on the internet? Put your work on the internet, because that's going to be where the church is headed. And boy, was he right about that. Now, there's still a brick and mortar church. But listen, there's an internet church too, where lots of people go and see somebody speaking the Word of God. Now, why do they want the resources? That's a great question. The original ambition of Lucifer, i.e. Satan, seems, making him the original enemy of God, appears to be related to ruling the earth, to ruling heaven and the angels and ruling the earth and mankind. He wants to take God's place. The 5 I wills, Isaiah 14:12-14. How you have fallen, O star of the morning, and that's the word Lucifer, son of the dawn. You've been cut down to the earth, you who weakened the nations. Hello, that's his strategy, to weaken and control the nations. But you said in your heart, I will ascend to heaven. I will raise my throne above the angels of God. Stars of God are angels. I will sit on the mount of assembly in the recesses of the north. That was the rulership of the earth. I will ascend above the heights of the clouds. God himself, I will be like the Most High. And that's his ambition. That's what he wants. And I'm sure that there's a lot of these angels, Elohim, they probably would say, well, that'd be nice. I'd like that too. But not going to happen. So that's what's going on. We're caught in the middle of it. Lucifer's ambition was to rule heaven and the angels and the earth and humans, proving that he was worthy to be compared with Yahweh, who is the omniscient, omnipotent, sovereign creator and ruler of all. There is nobody like him. All through history, he has influenced and controlled certain humans to accept his philosophy of ruling through deceit and power. His plan is to deceive and to overpower. Violence, pain, blackmail, leverage, murder, all of those things. Doesn't matter to him. Human life, he doesn't care about that. Not even a little bit. All he cares about is getting what he wants. That's a degenerative status. Your soul degenerates into this place where all you care about is me, me, me. Now, where are you with all that? Where are you in your relationships with all that? Is it just you? Are you only aware of yourself? Do you only care about yourself? Or when you're in a group of people, are you sensitive to the other people and what's going on with them, how they fit into the group? Are you sensitive to that at all? Or are you only able to think about you? Pretty interesting question. You say, well, that's ridiculous. Who is that way? Yeah, see, if you're not that way, it doesn't occur to you that anybody could actually be that way. But there are people who only are aware of themselves. They only see themselves, and they don't ever see the other people in their life. In the room with them, they don't ever consider what they want or how they feel or what's even going on with them. They only are aware of what they want and they feel. Now that's called being egocentric. You can only see your side of things. And that's a very difficult thing to be with, to live with. And this is the devil, of course. He only wants what he wants. He doesn't care about any of the rest of it. And he can pretend that he does to try to trick you, but he doesn't. So, all through history, he's done that. In today's semi-free economy, listen to this, we can choose to withdraw the resources that we receive from these areas of human life that are clearly not going toward God. Clearly. You know, you can do this with the different tech companies. You can find the tech companies that are not part of this big global deal. We were looking at salad dressings, and somehow we got a magazine article or something that said which of these companies that make these products are part of this big global, you know, conglomerate, this big money thing that goes all the way back to about 3 different companies that own everything. I'm not going to get into it. Well, we discovered that there was a salad dressing maker who was not part of all that. Ken's Dressing. And so we thought, well, he makes a good dressing. And it's Ken's Dressing is just Ken. It's not tied to any other big, you know, global group. So we buy Ken's to keep our money out of the hands of these other people. So that's what I see going on here, is this idea of I don't have to give my money to people who hate Christians, who want to destroy Christians. I don't think that's a smart thing to do. So Yahweh, our Creator and God, created the divine institutions to enable humans to live in an environment of freedom, enabling us to choose human virtue, i.e. right and wrong, love or greed, is our way of life. You get to decide. But listen, those are not just one decision. Right and wrong is a lifetime choosing of right and wrong. And the more you choose right, the more you're able to choose right, and the more you want to choose right. Same with wrong. Love or greed. So the opposite of love is not hate. The opposite of love is greed. Unconditional love says, I give you everything. Greed says, I want everything you have for me. So, I want. Love says, I give. Now, which one are you? Are you a giver or are you a taker? You say, well, I'm not a taker. Well, what you're saying is that you're not a giver. You don't have resources within you that someone comes into the room and you want to give to. It doesn't occur to you to do that. And that's something that you need to really consider and think about and make some changes. If you don't care to give to others, you know, if you don't care if other people perceive you as giving, then, you know, maybe you only are concerned with yourself. Now, this is what this boils down to, is everybody being concerned for themselves. Just the opposite of what the Bible teaches. The opposite of what Jesus was teaching and what Paul was teaching. Philippians chapter 2, he starts with this discussion of humility. And then he gets into this caring for one another and taking care of one another like you're taking care of yourself and all this. And it's putting others, you know, trusting God to take care of me so that I can put all that I have into you. Flows down, through, and out to others. That's the process. So, this kills the devil's plan. Devil's plan is greed. Devil's plan is fear, anger, bitterness, hatred. Shut down, close up. Mind your own business. Don't reach out. Don't confront. Don't lovingly confront. So, we are in a place technologically, and I've written about this, that says every human soul is designed so that no matter the situation or the pressure from an outside influence, no one can break into your human soul and pull the low volition lever for you. And I believe that God will honor that. Some have come to a point of technological advance so that they believe they can actually move you to make choices that not just give you options but influence you to vote a certain way. So we're actually at a point of technology and development so that these new AI programs can scan your entire history of online decisions and make a very accurate prediction about how you're going to vote on something, about which salad dressing you're going to choose. With enough data, AI can create an online persona that becomes a reflection of you. It becomes you. It looks like you, it talks like you, and it chooses like you, and it'll be very, very difficult to choose between the two. So, has it been an hour? That's not possible. So evil takes away freedom. It silences us. It controls us. Controls knowledge and the flow of information. In a free society, one of the ways that these comparisons I'm trying to make a comparison of Israel before Christ and the United States now. You go, how can you do that? Well, listen, people during that time are very much the same as people today. There is an aspect of people that's always the same. Now, these people in Israel in the 800 BC, they had a lot of differences compared to us, a lot. But there's so many similarities, and that we're still humans operating in human ways. So I think we're pretty safe trying to draw comparisons. So evil wants to take away your freedom. It wants to silence you. It wants to control what you can hear, what you can see. I should send out an interview that Jordan Peterson did with this girl from North Korea that escaped, how they have removed many words from their dictionary. These words aren't allowed to be used, like love. The word is never used. They don't allow the people in North Korea to use the word love or family, or you're not introduced to those ideas. They call it something different. It's all related to the state. That's how they brainwash these people from birth. Then they get it in their system, and they have children, and it's part of their predispositions. Pretty crazy. So this is evil. It wants to rewrite history, tear down the statues, and rewrite everything. All these people were racist. If they ever owned slaves, which just about everybody did at that point in time, everywhere in history, it was an acceptable idea. It was a wrong but accepted idea. And so it's insane to look back and try to impose the put-on standards of today on people that lived 200 years ago, 300 years ago. Can't do it. But it's being done. Not for truth, not to get at any kind of truth, but to tell a narrative that accomplishes a certain goal. To tell this story that culminates in certain people having power. That's all it is. That's the devil. That's the devil's ploy. He is a deceiver. He's a liar. So, rewriting history to fit a narrative that enslaves and inspires anger, hatred, jealousy, and greed, turning people against each other. America's not near as divided as you're led to believe. Not near. Now, there is a division, and there are some people who have been convinced that the people that love America are crazy, overdone. It's just too much. Well, no, it's not. But it's been drummed into them and drummed into them and drummed into them, so that all this is at a fever pitch. And all that it's going to take is for the resources of these new people, as they're being called, remove those resources, and there's going to be, it's going to get crazy. And there's no question about that. It's going to get that way. It's too late for it to not get that way. But so I would encourage you to prepare yourself in some form or manner, and maybe we shouldn't record this part of it, but God sent Elijah out of sight he said no more rain, and he sent Elijah out of sight to protect him. He sent him away from anyone who could rat him out, to the evil authorities that would try to seize him so Ahab could kill him. Elijah's primary weapon was prayer. So I want to get to that. We're at 6:01, but just give me another minute or two. All of this took place through prayer. The fire that came down, prayer. The drought that starved out the economy, prayer. Asking God to do what would be beneficial to his cause. Asking God to do what would be destructive to the devil's cause. Ask. So, we should discuss what we ought to be asking. Maybe we'll do that after we quit recording. Maybe we'll talk about what we need to pray about. So, Father, thank you so much for your grace and mercy. Pray that you give us wisdom about how to pray to you about our nation. We ask it in Christ's name. Amen.